Hey you guys, it's Thomasina. Welcome back to my channel. So I don't know if you guys be seeing it, but I definitely be seeing it. It'd be so many like hateful posts about New York City, about like how awful New York is. And granted, I have my moments where I'm just like, oh my god, get me out of this city. But I wanted to make a video, kind of a more positive video, about why I love New York City so much. It's common these days that when people talk about how much they love New York City, it seems as if they are glamorizing. Is that the word, glamorizing? I think that's the word. It seems as though they are glamorizing the city. For me, someone acknowledging what they love about New York City is not discrediting all the violence that we experience, you know, the trash, the poverty. You know, you have to find the good amongst all the evil to just maintain your sanity. And so that is what this video is going to be about today. I'm going to give you guys 10 reasons why I love New York City so much. So yeah, let's jump right into it. The number one reason on my list why I love New York City so much are the food options. Y'all know I love to eat. Like, I grew up a picky eater and I'm still like kind of a picky eater, but there are so many food options in New York, like so many things to try. It's literally like a melting pot of cultures. And so you have Jamaican food, Eritrean food, Nigerian food, Indian food, like so many options. I literally spend my weekends eating my way through the city and I wouldn't have it any other way. In North Carolina, I kind of grew up going to the same restaurants over and over again. So like Cheesecake Factory, Denny's, IHOP. We're always going to the same restaurants, eating the same thing, and that's kind of boring. So the thing that I appreciate about New York is that you could do a new restaurant every day and never run out of options. That's amazing, especially for a picky eater like myself who is trying to force herself to branch out and try different cuisines from different cultures, and also different like levels of dining. So you have like your fine dining, and then you have like the diners, and then you have like the little in-between spots, and then you have like the mom and pop shops, and then you have like the little bodega on the corner. So there are like so many options and so many levels to what kind of dining experience you'd like to have. And I appreciate that so much about New York. I really do. Another thing I love about living in New York City is that I am never bored. Like, if I'm bored in the city, it's literally because I'm choosing to do nothing. But there are so many options of things to do in New York. It's kind of hard to be bored in the city, even if you don't have friends. Like when I first moved to New York, or I guess when I first moved back to New York, I hadn't really made like a set group of friends, and so I was doing everything by myself. If you guys have been watching my channel for a while, you know all of my vlogs, I was out doing things by myself, and I was so happy to be doing them. And not only are there a surplus of things to do in New York City, many of them are free. A lot of people that are like native New Yorkers don't take advantage of all of the free options of things to do in New York City. So for me, I follow like the NYC for free Instagram page, and there's like things to do for free, the group on Facebook, and there are so many like free event accounts on Instagram that I make sure that I follow. And even on TikTok, there are New York City influencers that post events that are happening throughout the city for little to no cost, and I definitely take advantage of all of those. A lot of the like sport and fitness facilities around the city will do like month promotion where you get like a free class every month, or like a free class on your birthday, or like a free like trial for signing up with your email account. Like, you just have to take advantage of all these opportunities, and that's why I'm honestly never bored. Like, if I'm in my apartment, if I'm in the house, it's because I'm choosing to be, or because it's raining. And so, like, not to put the two against each other, because I think New York and North Carolina hold two separate experiences, and they are like for two like different types of people. And so it's not like a matter of what is better. It's just kind of a matter of like where I'm happiest. And so I can say for North Carolina, even when I was just there for the full month, if I wanted to find something to do, like I stepped my foot outside of the house and I'm automatically spending money. So although New York is expensive, there are a lot of free things to do to enjoy yourself. Whereas in North Carolina, it was harder for me to find free activities to do. literally leave your house, you're spending money, whether it's for gas, food, like an event, whatever, you're spending money. And I appreciate the fact that New York, you have the option to do things for free. The third reason why I love New York City is that you don't need a car. Like, I can honestly admit I'm not the best driver, and when I was living in North Carolina, I hated like driving. My friends would usually always come pick me up because I just hate driving, and so I appreciate access to the bus, access to the subway, access to the PATH train, just connecting you to different boroughs and different cities. And sometimes public transportation can be obnoxious, like there are always delays, people are always getting injured, and a lot of craziness ensues on train platforms and in the subway. But just having the option of not having to have your car here is greatly appreciated, because the parking is insane, the roads are insane, the drivers are super aggressive, and it would just, for me personally, be way too overwhelming to actually bring my car to the city. So yeah, I love the fact that I could just hop on the train and get to where I need to go. And even though, like, say coming from my apartment to Manhattan, it will be like maybe like a 45-minute trip. 45 minutes usually flies by, and it's probably like 4 or 5 stops to get to where I need to go, depending on how deep I'm going into the city. But the time is nothing, like it flies by. Granted, I would not go from Brooklyn to like Harlem or some like craziness like that. That's too long for me. But for the most part, even if it says like a 45-minute trip, like, you know, that's a hop, skip, and a jump in New York City. Like, that's not too long of a trip. The fourth thing that I appreciate and love about New York City is the freedom of expression and the lack of judgment. People leave their apartments looking any kind of way and no one bats an eye. Like, everyone just minds their business, everyone's in their own little world, and I appreciate that so much, because while I try to look put together most of the time when I leave the house, some days that just doesn't happen. Some days I gotta go out in my slippers and my socks. Some days I gotta go out in my sports bra and some Spanx. Like, it happens. I'm human. Sometimes I just don't feel like getting dressed, but no one bats an eye. And sometimes I can be going out looking completely crusty and I still get hollered at. So, like, no one cares. No one cares here. And I love it. I love it. People come out just wearing whatever they want to wear, and they feel completely comfortable wearing whatever they want to wear, and no one bats an eye. And I think that that's so special, especially coming from like a conservative neighborhood in North Carolina, where like you come out in like a rainbow tutu and fishnets and somebody's gonna look at you crazy, whereas here, like, you can wear whatever, do whatever, say whatever, and like for the most part everybody's just gonna mind their business. And yeah, I appreciate that. And granted, this is not like 100% across the board. You do have some people who will like look at you crazy or like say something to you, but for the most part, I think New Yorkers just mind their business. Which leads me into the fifth reason why I love New York: the people and the culture. Like I said earlier in the video, it's like a melting pot here. There are so many people from so many realms of life, so many different countries and states, and like it's just nice to be able to connect with those people. Like, when I was living in North Carolina, I grew up in predominantly white spaces, and so I didn't have a lot of access to maybe like Spanish speaking populations, and so I couldn't practice my Spanish as much as I want to, whereas here I get stopped on the train platform so many times by people who speak Spanish, and I'm able to communicate back with them and help them out if they need help. And I think I don't know, I love that, and it's something I didn't get to experience growing up. So I love the people here. There is this kind of like narrative that New Yorkers are so rude and like just mean for absolutely no reason, and from my experience, it's just not true. Strangers just talk to you and they're so friendly and they ask you how you doing. Even though they're speed walking past you trying to get to their next destination, they still ask. Even if they don't stay to hear that answer, they still ask. Whereas my experience in other places, people just kind of like head down in the zone, like don't really care how your day was, whatever. I think for the most part, as long as you don't cross them or like overstep a boundary or like be rude or initiate the rudeness, I feel like New Yorkers are pretty like laid back in their own zone and like, you know, friendly. Granted, everybody's experience is different, so don't come at me, but from my perspective, in my experience, New Yorkers are just very friendly people. There are so many opportunities to like network. I'm only comparing North Carolina and New York because those are the places where I've lived most of my life, and so that is what I that's what I'm able to compare. But when I was in North Carolina and I utilized the Meetup app, there weren't a lot of events going on. Whereas in New York, you always see someone posting about a network event on Instagram. If you go on the Meetup, there are like trillions and trillions of groups of people who are meeting up every week. Like there are just so many events happening and opportunities for you to go out and meet people if you actually want to and you want to put yourself out there. And I appreciate that, especially as someone who moved here solo dolo. Like I didn't know anyone. I have a couple of family members that are up here, but like I was trying to like meet people my age and make friends. And so having access to all these networking events in person was really, really helpful for me. And even during the pandemic, New York came together and was hosting a lot of like online game nights, online therapy sessions, online poetry reads. So there's just like always ample space and opportunity for you to be networking and meeting people in the city, and I absolutely love that. Another reason why I love New York City is that there are so many opportunities for work, at least for me in my industry. New York, it would be between New York and LA where I would book the most work as a model here in the US, and I feel like working in New York, the industry has just, it's been hard, right? It's been hard, don't get me wrong, but the industry has been good to me. There are so many like castings, so many freelance jobs, so many opportunities for background work because a lot of TV shows and movies are shot in New York, and so the opportunity to just be out here working and grinding, like I appreciate that so much. And even outside of the actual modeling industry, even if you are like in finance or you know, the food industry, the service industry, hospitality, all of that. There are just so many opportunities. Because there are so many opportunities to network in the city, so many opportunities to be plugged in with new jobs. And so New York is very expensive. It is very expensive, but I feel like there are a lot of opportunities for you to make money, to be able to afford it. A lot of people may disagree with that, but you really have to put yourself out there and put yourself in the position to be in the know about these opportunities. So that's all I'm gonna say on that. Reason number 7 why I love living in New York City is that it is such a dog-friendly place, you guys. I did have my dog up here for maybe like a month. Unfortunately, it was too hard for me to care for him just by myself between like working and like making sure he gets outside to use the gets outside to use the bathroom whenever he needs it. So it was hard and I had to take him back home to North Carolina. But compared to North Carolina, not saying North Carolina is not a dog-friendly state, but in New York, you can take your dog to a restaurant if it's like a little purse dog and just sit them on the floor and like have your brunch or whatever. Some people even sit their dogs like at the table. I wouldn't go that far because I feel like it's a respect thing if I'm eating with someone else. But so many dog parks, usually people don't like to have dogs in like small apartments. There are so many places outside for the dogs to like frolic and like live their best lives. And so people will have differing opinions about having a dog in the city, especially because our living spaces are so small. But I think that at least the people that I know that have dogs have done a very good job at making the space of quality for the dog, you know? They have dog meetups, you guys. Like you can find like literal dog meetups on the Meetup app, whether it's for a specific breed of dog, whether it's for other shy dogs, whether it's for hyperactive dogs, like literally so dog friendly. And there's like a doggy beach at Prospect Park that I like to just sit and like watch all the dogs play in the water. It's amazing, and I am a huge dog person. There's even this store called City Pups where people usually go to buy dogs, and it's like a pet store, but throughout the week on their non-busy days you can just walk in and like pick a dog to play with and go play with the dog in the little doggy playpen thing for like 10-15 minutes. New York loves its cats too, but I'm not as much of a cat person, so doesn't really apply to me. Reason number 8 why I love New York City, this is kind of like bittersweet, but the dating scene, the dating pool, there are just so many options here in this one city. But even though New York is seemingly massive, it's kind of small too, in a sense, because most people are using dating apps and you usually see the same people on like all the dating apps. So if the dating pool is kind of small in a sense if you're just using dating apps, but just on like your day-to-day life, like strolling through the park or like strolling down the street, like you'll just see so many people, so many single people. And I just think that even though dating like initially was very, very stressful for me. I mean, like very, very stressful. I think once I learned to just kind of go with the flow and have fun with it and kind of look at having so many options as a positive thing, I definitely began to enjoy my dating experiences a lot more. I appreciate the diversity of the city, and I appreciate how open people are to dating outside of their culture. Growing up in a predominantly white space in North Carolina, that wasn't always the case. Like, you usually see people pairing or partnering with others within their culture, and I appreciate the fact that in New York City, a lot of people aren't afraid to stray outside the norm. A lot of people think that love can't be found in New York City. I have found love in New York City, and it is the greatest experience. And it was shocking to me because I had played into the narrative that people are not looking for long-term relationships in New York City. People are not looking for serious relationships in New York City. People are young and like living their best carefree lives and like building their roster and all this, that, and the third. But if you put out the energy that you are looking for a serious long-term relationship, I wholeheartedly believe that that energy would be returned to you. But I think that the dating scene is what you make of it, but if you go in with a positive outlook, I think you can agree with me that having such a massive dating pool in New York City is pretty great. It's pretty great. The ninth reason why I love living in New York City, as someone who enjoys traveling, I really appreciate that New York City is a hub for flights, like connecting flights or like departing flights. I don't really know how to put this into words, but you can pretty much always find a direct flight out of JFK or LaGuardia to wherever you're going internationally. And if it's not a direct flight, you can always find a connection at JFK or LaGuardia. And it's just because it's a major city, like New York City is a melting pot, so everybody is coming in from all these different places. So it kind of makes sense to make New York like the hub for travel. I've saved so much money on flights flying out of either JFK or LaGuardia. I haven't flown out of New York ever, but so cheap. It's usually cheaper than JFK and LaGuardia. But just getting there, because I don't drive, like I would rather not commute or like take an Uber there. But I really appreciate being kind of like being in a travel hub city, if that makes sense. It just saves a lot of money, especially for someone who like travels a lot. If you don't travel a lot, then you probably won't even care. But if you do, New York City is great for it. And last but certainly not least, the 10th reason why I love New York City is the grind culture. I feel you always hear the saying, like, if you can make it in New York City, you can make it anywhere. If you can make it here, you can make it anywhere. And I feel like that is so true. Because New York City is so expensive and it's so chaotic and there are so many people here, it can be overwhelming, it can be stressful, it can cause a lot of anxiety, and it can be hard on your wallet, you know? And so I feel like New York City cultivates hardworking people. New York City has this kind of like grind culture about it, where you are just like, this is where people come to make their dreams come true, whether they want to work on Wall Street or they want to be an actor or they want to be on Broadway or they want to be a supermodel. Like, this is where people come to make their dreams come true. Even people coming outside of the country, they like, New York is the dream, you know? This is where people come to make it happen, and I think that a lot of people are just constantly grinding, whereas again, comparing it to North Carolina, a much slower sense of living, so you're not like working as hard to make it. In New York, people may disagree with this, like you shouldn't have to be working so hard to just like survive and to just like eat a meal in New York, but I think that ultimately it builds strong character and it builds like resiliency. And I can just speak from personal experience, like I am a much more confident person, much more adventurous, have way more courage since moving to New York by myself, and I'm way more resilient. I would say that I'm more of a tough cookie. When I was living back home, I was super sensitive, and although I'm sensitive now, I think it's in a different respect. And living here, like, I know I gotta make rent next month, so what am I gonna do about it? You know, I'm not gonna sit there and cry about it. I'm gonna go out there and try to get some work, you know? And so, I don't know, for me, I feel like just living here by myself, I've developed this thicker skin that I think is needed in the world that we live in, and I definitely think that New York has helped me develop that. And like I said, a lot of people may disagree. A lot of people may think that the grind culture is unnecessary and that people shouldn't have to work so hard to just make a living, but shoulda, woulda, coulda. It's the life that we live in. You have to do it if you want to make it in the city, and you can choose to see the positive. You can choose to see your growth in the position. You can choose to see how you develop as a human living in New York, or you can complain about it. And I just choose to see how I've grown in the city. So yeah, those are 10 reasons why I personally love New York City. I'm not glamorizing New York City. This has just been my experience. And instead of scaring people away from pursuing their dreams and moving to New York if that's something that they want to do, I think speaking positively on an experience is more helpful. I don't know, maybe it may be that one sign for someone who is looking to move to New York City. So I just wanted to share my experience because I did do a video about why I hated New York City, and so of course I had to come back with a more positive vibe. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. As always, thanks for watching, and I will catch you guys in the next one. Bye! 'Cause I'm not just a pretty girl.